Thank you. Yes, move closer. Thank you, everybody. We're just reorganizing our seating to make it more intimate. But thank you, everyone, for joining on this, which will be the swan song for Nigel Kennedy, our Section 151 officer, the key person in our finances. So thank you very much, Nigel. Please, Hannah, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. So we have apologies from Councillor Regisford and from Councillor Harley, but Councillor Harley is listening in online.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest from members? I see none, so thank you very much. The next item is to look at the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions on it from people present?
Chair, yes, I think there was a query from Councillor Altino about the date of the follow-up report. I think it's actually come to us in January, so we are seeing it actually this evening. I think that report that was asked for, and I think the other one I was going to ask about, if I could, on page 18. Again, we were going to have the internal auditor assured us that the committee was going to have an update in January, but I wasn't sure that we'd actually seen one for there. But I'm happy to be corrected by people if I have missed it.
I'm just looking at the minutes. Do you know at all?
It was to do with the fire risk assessments.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you know with state of play?
Yeah, Chair, I can come in there if that's helpful.
Yeah, the progress report that Gurpreet should be, or Joe should be able to give an update on. So do you want to?
Yeah, so the fire risk safety review, the report has been issued to management. We're awaiting a response, so it hasn't quite made this committee, but it's been issued to management. Field work is completed. Once we've received management responses, obviously that will be finalised and then issued to the next available committee.
Thank you. So we're just waiting on management. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, may we approve the minutes as correct? Yes, I don't see any disagreement. So thank you very much indeed. We'll do that. Are there any, in the next two items, addresses by members of the public or councillor addresses?
No, there's no addresses of either. Thank
you very much. So we proceed then to the presentation by introduction by Laura Bessel of the Housing Benefit Audit Report. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a report to the committee to detail the excellent progress that the Housing Benefit Service has made this year on the KPMG audit for last year's housing benefit expenditure. The important figures are that there have a £36 million spend. There was a slight overspend of £24. So from that process onwards, it means that there hasn't been any subsidy loss to the council in terms of the claim that's been made. In terms of LA error, we were under the threshold. So that means that there isn't any capping of any performance issues either. So I just wanted to bring to the attention that it was an excellent year and that we're sustaining it in the current year's progress. So it's not a one-year blip. It seems to be a sustained improvement across the service.
Thank you very much. May I just ask one question first, and then I've got other questions, but I'll take them from committee members. Previously, I think we had an average over 3 years. Is that no longer the case?
Yes, Chair. So what's happened is that the Department for Work and Pensions has changed their approach, what they call cake testing. So you have a variety of cells, you check 40 claims in that cell, and then if any errors are found, it's extrapolated and you do some more checking. That regime has changed from this year onwards, so last year's subsidy claim, where they have now what's called a £50 cap. So any changes which maybe had a very small mitigation level of say 10 pence, no longer drive a 40 extra workbook check. And also as well, any workbooks for previous years, they're not checking those either. So it makes that a lot smoother and a lot cleaner process for the benefit service.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I'll take Simon or Tina first.
Yeah, so who are the landlords, or what type of landlords are they that are providing supported accommodation but they're not registered providers? And is there anything we can do to get them to become registered providers so we're not left with this financial burden?
Yes, so Chair, apologies. So they don't get the full subsidy allowance because we have to pay those claims because they're a charity, but we don't get full subsidy. So the government doesn't give us 100% of that expenditure. In terms of moving forwards, we actively encourage commissioning sites, so that would be the county, the Home Office, the NHS and ourselves, to say if they is there a scheme that needs to be provided in the city, that they look for a registered social landlord in the first instance. However, if they don't bid in that commissioning process, but charities do, then we're kind of stuck and we're asking those charities to partner up with housing associations to try and mitigate that loss in subsidy. But it's kind of hard because from an Oxford City Council point of view, with rents as high as they are, it's hard for a housing association to possibly buy in the area to then become a landlord.
Okay. Ross?
So just to be clear, so that was, Laura, so that was in response to Councillor Ortino's question with regard under the financial implications with registered housing provider. So in the line saying, unfortunately, not with several providers who are not RPs, resulting in substantial annual loss to the council. So it is a substantial annual loss. So we do need to follow up on that and push through, I suppose, for them all to be registered. And I just wanted to note as well, too, a good thing, if I could. Because I like to note the good things as well, because that's what audit's about as well, is making the good and the questionable as such. But also that the training for the staff is now embedded as part of the council's local tax and benefits service, and it's improved morale, because that's talked about later in different reports, and technical knowledge of the staff. So thank you for that. That's happened, an improvement. Thank you. I will have one other question if I could. Thank you. So this report from KPMG came through in November. And it's a very thorough report. I mean, too thorough, I think, in some things, because they've given some of the cake changes as well.
We take that.
Oh.
Because it's the next agenda item.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I
Sorry.
thought it was linked to that, but okay, fine.
Thank
Right.
you. Would you like to
Yeah,
respond
can
to
I
the
just,
first question?
yes, sorry, Councillor. Councillor Smith, I totally agree with you. As a benefit service, it is quite demoralising to see rents of £400, but we only get £147 back. So we totally concur with your point. The issue we have, it's where partners such as the NHS and the Home Office do not have regard in terms of the loss to the City Council finances. Their obligation is to make sure these people are housed and supported in the community. So it's all about a balance of working with our partners as much as we can.
May I ask, are they aware of this issue? Can they be pointed towards a registered provider?
Yes, they are very much aware. They know my name. I'm not going to lie. But their reply to me is that if they don't apply, then we can't use that. And we do tend to have 2 or 3 organisations across the city which kind of have a foot in the door, shall I say. They know when tenders are coming up, and they know what's happened, and they've got insider knowledge because they probably already got the contract in the first place. So they're going to win the tender because they always hit the mark in terms of the scoring process.
Oh, okay. It says here that Ryan is, well, when we come on to setting the tax base, yeah.
It's not that report, it's the report based on the substance.
Oh, sorry,
That's
okay,
also
sorry,
taken
please,
into
okay,
account.
now we move on to that. Would you like then to just?
Oh,
You can
Councillor
ask your
Smith, is there any
questions,
questions you'd like?
Was if I could, Chair. Yeah, this report came through in November. We have a massive amount of paper to read through and agenda, and I just wondered, perhaps in future, if that is possible, we could have seen this report from KPMG in advance. It would just have been helpful. We could have read it over Christmas, possibly. Oh dear, that sounds very sad and nerdy, but it would have prepared us quicker, I think, actually, for your report as well this evening. That's all. Just trying to be helpful.
Absolutely, Councillor Smith, I'll take that on board, thank you.
Thank you. So apologies for thinking we were moving on to the next item, which is also relevant to your role. So we're asked at this point just to note the report. So I hope that's acceptable, and congratulations to you and your team for now. How much, actually, just to give us a sense of the importance of this, how much did we lose because we exceeded the threshold, let's say last year?
So previous years, councillor, when I've been to these meetings, they've been around the £500,000 mark. So it's significant improvement within the service.
So 500,000 improvement is not child's play. Well, congratulations. Thank you very much. All right, let's now move on, and I will ask Ryan to introduce setting of the council tax base, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the setting of the council tax base report for 26-27. We're showing about a 2.2% increase based on last year, and the majority of that reasoning is due to the embedding of the premiums, the second home premium and the long-term empty premiums, and also the review that's been conducted on the council tax reduction scheme for this year as well. It's resulted in those numbers dropping quite drastically. And then once we've approved the council tax base, that then feeds into the council tax setting, which goes to the full council budget setting meeting in February.
Thank you very much. Nice and brief. Questions? Ros?
Question and sort of a comment first. If I could. Thank you for the report. I don't think we need to dwell too long on here because council tax is liable to go up because of government funding and so forth to start with. I was just looking at the tables with regard to dwellings eligible for discounts and also extra premiums as well. And the first thing I noticed was the long-term empty properties going up in numbers. I mean, quite substantially from last year to this year, in fact, actually, to this coming year rather. So we're looking at over 500, nearly 560 properties long-term empty, which will gather the extra 100% premium as such. And then I also looked at the dwellings eligible for 25% uninhabitable dwellings discount. And it just occurred to me that I know a bit of buildings that have been empty for over 10 years, over 10 years, but they're not uninhabitable. And I just wondered how much how often it is questions, perhaps it's not something you'd come across, but how often is it sort of given by the owner of that property? Well, it's uninhabitable because it hasn't been lived in for 10 years, which of course some properties aren't. I just wondered how the two balance each other out, because one's for discount and one's for premium. Do you see what I mean? Who does the equations? Who decides?
Ryan, all right.
So the major increase on the long-term empties is mainly due to the embedding of the, because this time last year we extended the long-term empties from 2 years to 1 year. So that's where the majority of the increase is coming in for. In terms of the assessment as to whether they're inhabitable or not, that purely comes down to sort of a revenues inspection element of the property and declarations from the owner if they.
Right, okay. So declarations from the see, this is where then my bubble goes round in a circle. So I've left my property empty and I can claim it's uninhabitable and get a discount rather than paying the 300% premium. This is what worries me. Does there actually have to be a physical visit to check that out? Thank you. That's what I was wondering. Yeah, okay, fine, good. That's all I wondered. Thank you for that one.
Simon?
Who is checking for long-term empties? Because probably like colleagues over there, we regularly go and knock on doors, and there are some quite suspicious looking houses with like quite overgrown front doors, or appears to be nobody there. Yeah, I mean, it'd be good for you to let all councillors know who to report potential properties like that to, because we all see them as we're delivering leaflets and things. But yeah, are we actively checking? Because I think there are way more than we think. And what are the criteria? I mean, if it's like furniture in there, does that get them out of it? Or, I mean, I see all too many in my ward, and it's a ward with, high deprivation, desperately need housing, but I don't know what can be done about it.
Is this for you, Laura?
Hello, councillor, I'm Laura and it's me. So from this point of view, yes, at my team pick up, we deal with local tax, the inspections remit, and we look at all properties. So in 2025, in August, we did a review of all long-term empties and second home premiums, just to make sure, as you exactly say, whether it's furnished, whether it's empty, whether it's derelict, if it's an annex. There's a variety of different ways in which the council tax legislation gives discounts and exemptions, as Councillor Smith has just alluded to. So we have been out and done a thorough check. Another reason why Ryan explained that the increase is not only just from year one, but also because we have reviewed all of those properties. We've done some extensive walk in the streets to pick up those, like you say, long grasses, to see what's going on, contacted the owners, made inquiries. Some of them don't live in the UK, they don't have contacts, shall we say, and they are not fussed that they don't have any contact with the City Council. I have got a report here that talks about the amount of properties that we have got, for example, on the 400% charge. So that's the over 10 years, and that's 12, which raises 103,000 in revenue to the council. And we've got a variety of different reasons as to why. A couple of them are with Oxford University. A couple of them are Class F exemptions, so that means that they had an estate, the person's died, and they're still waiting to go through probate. We also have other people that just don't want to engage with us. We have to be honest and say they're entitled to their extra property, and if they choose not to engage, then they don't have to. These accounts are all surprisingly up to date. None of them are at an enforcement stage, so they are just paying the premiums and carrying on. So it's a type of thing now that we're going to build within our housing keeping. So every year we will check on these just to make sure we're correctly applying the charge.
I mean, I just wondered if you could possibly, if you're allowed to share the information with members about in their wards where those empty properties are, because I mean, if I go and stick a leaflet in a letterbox in a few months' time and I see Rosie's leaflet in there before me, it's a sort of indication that maybe nobody lives there, sort of thing, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it would be useful for us to know, I think, because I see a lot of places, I think, I don't know if anybody is there, or the person next door says there's nobody there, but I don't know whether they're on your list or not.
Yes, so I can share with you the address. I can't share with you who the owner is. And you're right, last year we did do a leafleting marketing to say we've got pressures on the housing stock. We have got people that are homeless. Could you please consider renting that property out so that it becomes occupied? But as I say, for example, there are people who are foreign nationals, purchase a property because they'd like their young child to go to Oxford University in the future, and it sits there empty for 10 years till they come of age. Which is why, like you say, we can't get hold of these people.
I know some of these houses. I mean, one question which is somewhat related, you mentioned some of these long-term empty properties, at least they're not occupied as residences, they may be used for other purposes. I think a university. And we know that the university and the colleges and the private schools, if they are charities, are exempt. Could you give us, I mean, when you look at these figures, which you've got in the table, it does look as if maybe almost one property in 6 may be entitled to these kinds of exemptions. I mean, it depends how you define it, because you're all doing council tax band D equivalent. But could you explain the nature of these, the size of these university and charity properties in relation to the 63,000 or so properties in the city?
Okay, so I am going to have to refer to Mr. McGaskill, who has my monthly stats spreadsheet open at the moment. But in terms of the charities, yes. So where a charity is in residence or as owner of the property, they are exempt from those long-term empty premiums, depending upon if they are going to, from a business rates point of view, for example, if they're going to be occupied solely for charitable purposes, that affects the amount of revenue. In terms of a council tax point of view, they do attribute property, but with the amount of development that's going on, we have got some areas of development such as the Ellison development, Ellison development and Oxford University. So they've got properties that haven't been removed yet out of the council tax listing, so they're still charged. They're awaiting demolition, and are not until they're demolished are they then going to remove there. So it is a problem where the universities are proactively looking at developing in the area, but if they're not doing it quickly enough, they're attributing these extra premiums, and there isn't anything that we can do about it because they're not going to bring them back in. An example it's a halls of residence. We used it during COVID for our temporary accommodation. We've asked them if we could use it again because it's empty and unoccupied, and they've said no. So it's that type of mentality that we have with the university, where we're trying to negotiate with them, but unfortunately the relationship isn't strong enough that we can get our other problems to be resolved using their empty properties. In terms of exemptions, it costs us 35 million across business rates and council tax in charitable relief. So it does mean it's a big gap in the city's funding because we could be using that elsewhere.
And just to be clear, so there are various properties that are occupied by what I would call university enterprises. Are they also exempt?
Yes, so if I give an example of Nuffield or Oxford University Press, then yes, that does raise some slight problems because they are associated to a charity. So if I use Oxford University Press, they produce books, they do publications, they are a trading arm, they make profits, they report to Companies House, but because they're associated to Oxford University, they then don't pay any rates.
Sorry, I can see you have your hand up. Phil, would you like to elaborate upon this?
Phil, you're on silent.
Just to support Laura, she'd actually mentioned a little earlier that I might have to have the spreadsheet open in the background just in case there was follow-up questions. There's actually 5,750 properties out of our 60-odd thousand properties that are exempt in one form or other from the council tax payment.
And these are primarily charities, is that correct?
Students.
These are university properties, not charities, so occupied by students as individual properties or bigger buildings that are occupied but in, well, multiple occupiers with students in rooms such as bedsits.
And that adds up to this figure that Laura just mentioned, I think 35 million of lost council tax, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. In effect, our largest occupiers and our largest periods of exemption are connected to the universities.
Can I sorry, to just be clear, Chair, that is over both business rates and council tax.
Yes.
Is the 35 million, yeah.
No, that is clear. Ros,
Thank you. Can I just confirm that under the discretionary elements, page 42, the council's overall total of dwellings has increased from 63,603 to 63,942 in a year. So that equals what, 339 properties now coming onto the council tax base? It's not a lot for a city district, is it?
It is, insofar as we don't have a lot of land that we can build on. So some of it will be what I will call splits and mergers. So some of the properties will be converted into HMOs from large properties. That's where predominantly we're seeing the major changes at the moment. But we don't forget, we will also have some properties being knocked down, then taken out the list. So although it's only an increase of 350, that doesn't take into account the fact that you may have already had 200 removed from the list because they're not habitable.
one other category, at least one which I know in my area I'm lobbied about a lot, is cases where maybe there were large houses with a basement flat. The owner wants to sell and they are treated as two residences for council tax purposes. And the new owner wants to combine them. How many such properties arise in your list where you've got second homes, increasing the number of second homes classified as such, increasing considerably? Is that partly due to better monitoring of this, or how does it occur?
Okay, so in terms of second homes, Chair, 2 seconds if I go backwards on my page, we've got 809 properties which we have been reviewing, and a further 302 properties which are exempt from the second home review. So it gives us a total of 0.017% are subject to second home, a classification of that. Now, in terms of active marketing is what we call it, into whether you're going to sell it or whether it's out for let. So there are 276 of those out of the 302 which are exempt from that second home levy. So there is scope within the regulations to allow people to do that. But what we're finding is that sometimes when the tenant moves out, there needs to be changes of carpet and things like that. So then they will attribute the second home, and then at the point when they start to market it, then it gets removed again. So we will always have little bits of that second home premium applied.
Thank you very much. Ros.
Yeah, one last question. I know of people who have separated their house, into two dwellings as such, and then when the family's grown, they've wanted to reunite it as to one property as such, and they've applied to have that done. But I think they have to apply for planning permission, and it can be denied, and therefore they go on paying two lots of council tax. Is that correct?
Yes, councillor, that is correct. We have to apply whatever the valuation office puts into the tax base. So we are only a billing authority. We don't make the decision as the revenue service how that property is made up. So if you take the example, the property is split into two, so it becomes property A, property B, and you want to re-merge it back to an A. If planning is refused, the valuation office will not look at it. But even if planning is agreed, the valuation office may not necessarily agree with the building decision and may still keep it as two split hereditaments. Well, the important part is then we would have to take a look at those two properties. We'd have to decide if one was separately self-contained or whether it would be an annex, and then whether it's occupied or used for storage. So there's lots of different, and I don't really mean this rudely, but there are lots of different ways that you will pay the tax. I think the government's made sure every element's covered.
I think it's getting planning permission to put it back to one household is the problem that,
Yes.
as I see it. And then the valuation office will then make a valuation on that property.
And the valuation office at the moment are taking 9 months to make a decision, and that's another problem we've got. So we do have lots of people who are understandably angry because they're obviously paying a lot of money towards the council, for then in 9 months' time for us to issue a refund.
So I understand, yeah. And of course, the valuation office being so far behind as well, with new properties coming on as
Correct.
such and gradually being occupied, those people are having delayed council tax bills because the valuation office hasn't put a value on them yet.
Correct. We do have, I think it's 104 properties that we're waiting for banding, as they call it. We did try last year and the year before to give what's called a band that you think it's going to be applied to, and they can play up front. However, of those 102, only one account did. So we decided to stop doing that because that affects Ryan's statistics. At the end of the day, he gets a bit angry with me. So we've stopped that process.
I think Kel's surprised. I don't think, I think it's the same for the other districts actually in Oxfordshire too, so I understand.
It is. It's a national problem. But just to give some assurance, the valuation office is moving government departments. They are now coming back to MHCLG. So there's hope that they will be modernised and stop having to deal with paper and maybe deal with an email. And we may be able to get some decisions a bit quicker.
My dealings with the valuation office are just so slow.
Thank you very much.
I much more frequently than you'd expect come across people who say that their house is in a completely different band from an almost identical looking house next door. This is on Greater Leeds, where you would imagine there'd be pretty similarity in banding of houses. What can the city council do to help people like that? Because I was just being told get them to contact the valuation office, which seems to lead nowhere. I mean, surely you must be able to see somehow if oddly a house is a different band from the one's identical to it.
I'm afraid not, councillor. It's not up for us to make that decision. So say, for example, two houses are side by side, one's a D and one's an E, for example. The band D could be it hasn't moved occupation or ownership, and they may have lots and lots of renovations on the house, two-storey extensions, for example. But until that property is sold, it will never move up to a different band. The problem we have with taxation, property taxation, is that the change of event occurs not at the point when it's built, but at the point of sale. So you will find that estate agents will put onto the web pages, this is a property D, not realising that it's had two-floor extension. And then when the new person moves in, it becomes an F and is therefore a surprise. So that's one reason why. Another reason could be because it's what they would call the hereditamate, the footprint of the building. It may well be at the point, although it's reviewed as if it was in 1992, it may well be that the amendments to the property doesn't significantly increase its value to change its band.
Just say you have explained that far better than I could to him, but I mean, I have so much casework like that, so that's why I'm in touch with the valuation agency so often.
I'm going to suggest, because this is an issue that I'm sure all councillors get approached about, you know, it's a bone of contention. I think it might be a good idea, even outside this, you know, wider among councillors, to have a brief session once explaining the foibles of the council banding system and also about the exemptions and so on, because people then, I hope, like you've just explained, will feel they understand better the realities, because it doesn't sound right, but it's how it works. Is that agreeable? Thank you. So, well, thank you very much, and Ryan as well. We actually have to make a decision on this. We have to agree the council tax base as explained in the paper. We have to agree that the projected level of collection is set at 98%, which is normally what we achieve, and agree the tax bases for the various parishes and the unparished areas are as shown in Appendix 2. Can I see a vote in those in favour?
Chair, could I get a proposer and seconder for each?
Oh yes, I'll propose. Someone going to second.
Okay.
Okay, and we all put our hands up. So thank you very much.
Can I just clarify, can we do each of the three? So we're happy for all three to be approved.
Okay.
Is that the vote?
Yes, they're all three. So we'll propose and you will second all three and we approve. All the hands can keep going up and down. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Laura. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. Okay, well, thanks. Let's move on then to agenda item 8, which is Roger Martin going to introduce briefly the risk management report. Over
Thank
to you,
you.
Roger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the report that you have in front of you covers the outcome of the Council's quarterly review of both the corporate and the service risk registers, and this review was completed at the end of December. Just to very briefly summarise the process, the risk owners and those responsible for implementing controls must update their respective entries. The updated registers are then reviewed and signed off by the director. And then there's scrutiny and approval of the risk registers by the council's corporate leadership team. And the corporate leadership team met on the 18th of December, just before Christmas, to consider these risk registers. And then the final version is presented by to yourselves at the Audit and Governance Committee. This formal process is supported by the Council's Officer Risk Management Group, which undertakes a rolling programme of service risk register reviews and also considers the corporate risk register as well. The group, which is chaired by Nigel, last met on the 9th of December and reviewed the information and technology and the financial services risk register. It next meets on the 26th of March, and at that meeting, it'll be the turn of the people and the economy, regeneration and sustainability risk registers. So appendices 1 and 2 present the corporate risk register. The overall number of risks remains unchanged, with 6 red and 8 amber. Turning to the service risk registers at appendices 3 and 4, in the table at point 9 of the report, it says that there are 4 new risks. I must apologise because that should read 3, reducing the number of amber risks to 60 and the total number of risks to 95 in the service risk register. 3 red risks from the last report in October have been reduced to amber. Those are number 27, planning delays caused by external agencies. Number 46, budgetary pressures in law and governance caused by unexpected corporate issues and external legal costs. And number 126, concerning financial savings against community centres. There is 1 new red service risk, and this is number 109, failure to meet homeless temporary accommodation demand. The last point I have is that on page 105 of Appendix 3 and page 130 of Appendix 4, unfortunately, the risk description for risk 96 is missing. This should read, if there is a lack of legal support, the council will be unable to meet income, capital receipt and project targets. Alternatively, external legal spend will become more costly and will result in an increase in financial pressure. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the introduction to the report.
Thank you very much. I mean, the report is, as last time, very full and comprehensive, and I like the brief summary. Maybe I can start off with a question. When I'm looking, I mean, people like us, I suspect, focus on the red risks. When I'm looking at the corporate risks, your number 99, which is a utilities infrastructure that doesn't meet the needs of the city, I feel somehow, and I think this has arisen before, is we should be focusing on the risks that we have some control over. And I'm not sure to what extent we can control the utilities infrastructure. okay, we may occasionally have to give planning permission for something, but that's not our main involvement in utilities. And I just wonder if it's something we cannot influence, maybe it's not appropriate to be here. I'll be interested in your thoughts.
So yes, I would agree that much of that is out of the council's hands, but I think that where the council can have influence is by bringing pressure to bear where it's needed. I think there was a recent example where the council worked with other local planning authorities on sewerage, and it was able to bring some weight to bear through lobbying. So I think perhaps whilst I have a lot of sympathy with what you've just said, I think that the sort of the likelihood factor can be influenced by the council when its senior officers or perhaps even members are involved in lobbying with other organisations.
Thank you. I mean, just to continue, just the other one is on service risks. I want to know why, in particular, you've number 55, you've got law, governance and strategy, which is the income target not achieved because of basically, I think, lack of capacity in part. I mean, what I wonder is why do you single out law, governance and strategy? There will be other areas, I think, which fail to meet income targets and also, you know, have problems possibly of staffing. Well, I can see Emma is going to respond on this, so maybe I'll take Emma's response.
So obviously each director prepares their own service risk register. For legal services, there's quite a significant portion of my budget which is income driven, which then obviously contributes towards staffing costs and other things within there. We also have very little control over it. So for example, income will come from Section 106 agreements, which relies on planning applications, or it comes from awards at court, which rely on prosecutions. So we have no control at all over the income, which is why when we can see that there is a downturn, which there is at the moment in terms of the Section 106, it's a risk that we really have to be mindful of when we're looking at other things in the service area.
Thank you very much. I've seen, I think, 2 hands up. Simon, you had your hand up.
I mean, yeah, following on from James, like the addressing the causes and impacts of climate change, that's never not going to be read, is it? We've got a complete maniac running United States of America. So like whatever we do is not going to change that. So I think it would be useful to separate the ones out that we have little control over, that are always going to stay in that banding, to the ones that we hopefully we can do something about. Some of these other ones are specific to the council. And I suppose carrying on with Donald Trump's surprise, there aren't more red risks in there because we've got no idea what he's going to be doing that might affect our council.
Emma, would you like to respond to that comment?
I think in terms of legal services, the reason it's there is because it will have a significant impact if it occurs. So it's more to ensure that we are very cognizant of it. If it's not on the risk register, it's not then noted and considered when we're taking it to CLT, etc. We have had discussions around the corporate risks and around what to include and how to what degree we have control. Utilities, for example, was discussed at some length, and though we don't have control, we have quite a good position in terms of lobbying, etc. A lot was done in relation to Thames Water and the issues that we had with planning applications and the Environment Agency. So it is felt there is still a degree of impact that we can have, though we don't have control on it. And actually the impact of that risk in terms of our ambitions and our corporate objectives would be quite catastrophic. So, for example, if there was an issue in terms of water and sewerage capacity, the homes would not be able to be delivered, and that's one of the core objectives of the council. So, through the discussion that we had at CLT, it was considered that that was therefore one that, though we can't directly control it, it's really appropriate to keep it on the risk register and keep an eye on it and track what we're doing to mitigate that.
Just come back a bit, but it is separate from failure to meet the Social Housing Act, which is down on us, isn't it? So there should be a way of separating those that are under our control and those that are frankly not under our control.
Nigel has his hand up. I'll let him speak.
Yeah, no, I think just picking up Emma's comments, actually, it is, it is a risk to the overall council business. And, this is about almost about as much as about how you are going to respond to this risk. And some of the risks you're just going to have to accept. And those that you have very little influence over, like, that particular one, for instance, what you would do is just accept that risk, basically. But nevertheless, you do need to flag it up as a risk on the business, actually.
Ros?
Yes, we must be aware of risks, even if we can't absolutely solve them. And we can't absolutely solve the problem with who's in charge of the United States of America at the moment. We can comment on it there and be aware of it. And I think that's what risk management is about, really. I had some questions, if that's all right. And it's quite a few pages. So would you like all the questions in one go?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
gosh.
not do them all together? And Roger, I'm sure, will note the ones you're raising.
Yeah, some are questions, some are comments. The first one is on page 70, where it's a comment about oh dear, it's one of my pet subjects as well. People and the workforce as such. And it mentions there that 6 apprentices have started. Now, as you remember, I'm very keen on us growing our own. And it says it doesn't say which teams that in. I'm curious to know which team that's in. Actually, there's 6 apprentices, and very pleased to see that career progression schemes are running in legal and planning as well. But if I could have an answer on that one, that would be good. I then looked down the page, so just over the pages, under law, governance and strategies on page 71, top of that. Some of the systems in place to monitor and control compliance and updates are done manually done with input to reports clearance for agendas. There's an urgent need to review and enforce the sign-off process, as often reports are arriving late or amended once signed off. There are also reps at board. Oh, there are reps at boards also. I didn't quite understand that comment. And there will need to be a more detailed review once all the rules have been refreshed. And it also mentions that there needs to be some corporate consideration of this. This is establishing a corporate approach to project management, which we have talked at Audit and Governance about several times, actually, is having a corporate approach to project management, which is really important. And it is managed and designed on a service by service basis. So we really need to have an overall corporate, I think, management embedded, in fact, rather than it just being managed by a service by service basis. So sort of a comment on that. I put a tick against something under the political and partnership landscape, local and national, to use cross-party working groups for major decisions. I think that would be an excellent idea and look forward to seeing that happening. So that's page 75. 75. My pages are sticking together, I'm sorry. Right, page 75. This is talking about the economy, regeneration and sustainability. And the comments there from management are the strategy emphasised the importance of maintaining, improving and increasing tree capacity cover, for which become increasingly important with climate change. So I think that actually answers one of your questions actually about why climate change is in here. But I think it's important for climate adaptation. So I'm pleased to see that. But again, it's subject to approval process, wishing to bring them in. So I guess that's going to be a budget thing that we'll see in budget proposal that we'll see. Page 87. Right. This was looking at under property assets and is noted that required skills and capacity are not available to deliver required work progress. Obviously, that is a risk. And it says the progress on this is only 60%. I just wondered if how that was going to be improved to make better progress on that one. Or the management had anything that on that one. Right. This was page 92 is the next one. Communities and Citizen Service, budget and income. Income from event hire, budgeted target not met. And it talks about proactive advertising of space and managing stakeholders. It's only 30% progress on that, but 100% progress on other things, which is good to see. And right, that was not necessary. Right, I think I better leave it there because I've gone far enough. I don't want to confuse anybody.
Thank you. I mean, I wonder, some of these I think are more observations, but Roger, would you like to respond to the questions raised by Ros?
Okay, so the very specific questions, and I've just got in the main just a sort of an overview of the risk register. So I might have to take much of this away unless colleagues can help me. With regards to the apprentices, the 6 apprentices, I'm going to have to speak to Gail Malkin in the people team, and I can get a comprehensive list of where they're situated.
Emma, your hand is up.
I can't give you a full list, but I do know, for example, planning has taken on apprentices. So I think that there's a few around the organisation, but planning has been one of the bigger ones because there's a specific planning apprenticeship scheme.
Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I think the second query was specific to law, governance, and strategy. So Emma, can you help me with that?
Yeah. So what that commentary is really saying is one of the contributing factors to the lack of capacity in law and governance at the moment is this kind of unplanned approach sometimes that we get in relation to projects. Obviously, it's not something that's within our control in terms of project management, but so examples are given in the report. Their reports are often late to law and governance. We have made some changes to make sure that certainly management within this service area can track that reports have been cleared and who's cleared them. So you'll start to notice that there are initials and references appearing under the legal comments within reports. And we are using our case management system to get a better understanding of which clients have what work and what the time is spent on them, etc. But yeah, I think as with any organisation, there are always areas of governance and practice that could improve, and it's just flagging that. But that one in particular does have an impact on law and governance in terms of capacity at a time when we already have significant demands on capacity.
Thank you. Roger, do you want to respond on other points raised by Ros?
So I think the cross-party working group point I think was a comment. As was the comment concerning the economy area and the tree capacity cover. So, and then there was the property and assets, about the required skills and capacity not available to deliver the required work programs. Looking at the mitigations there, the short-term option is being explored to look at different way of holding resource with a commissioning model. I think, Mr. Chair, to be honest, if I need more information about that, I need to take it away and talk to the risk owner, Malcolm Peake.
Thank you. That's very sensible. Emma, by the way, your hand is up. Is that a legacy hand or a new hand? Legacy.
Chair.
Okay, Simon, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, so it's hard for us to sort of understand the detail of some of the risks, I suppose. So it's easy for us to look at the numbers, and it says no risk closes quarter. Are you setting yourself targets about the number of risks that you will close or reduce, or would you come back and say it's actually a good thing that you're identifying risk because it shows that you're checking yourself, so that we shouldn't be expecting the numbers to go down? It's not necessarily a bad thing for the numbers per numbers to be that high? Or are you setting yourself targets? We've got to get this done in the next quarter or the next 6 months or whatever.
No, so there is. I don't believe that the council. What you're seeing here with the risk scores is what the current probability and the current impact is as of today. What you can't see is that that the council also has target risk scores, which it's looking to get the risk down to. In the past, you have seen that detail, but because it made the reports very difficult for the committee to read, you're not seeing that in these reports. That was taken away about 6 months ago because the reports were sort of ineligible to the committee. So yes, there are target risk scores.
Thank you. Ros, you want to continue?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think there was one that I was a little bit concerned about, which showed 10% progress. This is on page 99. Again, it's the people team, they call it. Resources insufficient to meet the growing demands of service. Again, this seems to be a theme that we see, is that there's not enough capacity to deliver some services. And it does say there on page 99, we have improved resource levels in the operations team and have moved some workflows to iTrent and away from ASM. I guess the question is there still a problem with the ASM?
Roger?
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid, Mr. Chair.
I mean, are there other questions, Ros?
One more, because I've hogged and we need to get onto other things this evening as well too. Again, on the people team, and this was to do with data protection and non-compliance with data protection law. And I know we've had to refer ourselves to the Commissioner once before. So just highlighting the fact that we're still needing to clear records and so forth, including electronic and paper records. It says there 50% team involved in scanning project and continue with housekeeping activity. And it just mentions there's a high work demand impeding progress. So I think we as a committee need to know that, particularly with this data protection non-compliance. It might be something, Chair, that our external auditors pick up on.
Thank you. Do you want to respond on that? I mean, I'm going to suggest, Roger, if you don't have immediate responses, maybe you could prepare a note which through Hannah as the secretary can be circulated among the members of the this committee.
I will do. I feel slightly awkward that I haven't answered the questions very well. And I suppose what I'd say about that is that my sort of primary role is to facilitate the process. And whilst I do have, obviously a certain degree of understanding of the risks, I'm really the sort of the oil and the wheels of the mechanism, I would say, of the risk management process.
I don't think you need to apologise. I'm just counting. You've got 84 pages there with lots and lots of detailed tables. You can't be expected to master the detail of all of them. But if you could get back on the specific questions, I think that would be very much appreciated.
I will do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And so, seeing no more hands, will the committee please agree to note the report? I take it as a yes. Thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go on to the two internal audit reports. I'm not quite sure which of you will be, whether it's Joe or Gurpreet who are going to be introducing. Just while we're here, I'm going to suggest that we take annual governance statement after agenda item 10, because that is currently on the proposed agenda. It would be splitting the statement of accounts and then the progress on the external audit. So just for tidiness, and maybe let Emma go after that, I'm going to suggest we put what's in the papers agenda item 12 as agenda item 11. But with that small change, would you like to introduce the progress report, Joe or Gurpreet?
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to present to the committee the internal audit progress report for January. Noted progression has been made against the internal audit plan for the council for the year. As mentioned previously, the draft fire safety follow-up report is now waiting on management comments. We're well into progress of field work for audits relating to medium-term financial strategy, leisure contracts, and the data analytics audits. We're also currently in the process of scoping and planning for the remaining 2 audits of the plan for cybersecurity and ODS client and commissioning. Just as a note, Gurpreet and I are also having been in contact with Nigel, are in the process of scoping and drafting the internal audit plan for 26-27. So yeah, please let us know if the committee have got any questions regarding the progress report.
Thank you very much. Nice and simple. There are various, if I can just start, there are various, the ones we look at are the incomplete reports, you know, there's some legacy from 23-24. There's one which is a high risk on income generation. And then when we come to 24-25, we've got several overdue, again, GDPR 1, high risk, and the like. Who's best? I'm looking at Nigel. Who's best placed to answer these questions about why we are having these delays? Some of them definitely, when we come to recommendations in progress, then that's you, Phil. But is there any comment on these other ones?
I think, Chair, most of them are picked, well, all of them are picked up in that recommendation follow-up, basically. So we'll pick them up on that report if we may, actually. So might be more. Yeah, is that okay?
Okay.
Beg your pardon, Chair. Apologies. I was making notice to the internal audit progress report as opposed to the internal audit follow-up recommendations report, which I believe is next on the agenda.
I suppose it's a similar issue, so let's cover them together. But I notice in the recommendations in progress, there's been slippage in terms of purchase cards, slippage, well, twice, 3 times under that heading, 4 times, sorry. And then we come to overdue. So I think it's a more generic issue of slippage. The initial slippage on those is not large. It's only a couple of months, but maybe we could move on to the overdue where there is repeated changing of completion dates in some of these, which are not necessarily with your name against them, but are you able to stand in, for example, well, there are some which relate to Gale, which I think Nigel will respond to, and then there's some which have Emma's name against them. But would you like maybe to take first what I was just asking in terms of the recommendations in progress? Are you confident you'll be able to complete those on time with the slightly delayed target dates? I think this is for you, Phil.
Sorry, Councillor. Good evening. We've made significant progress with the payment and credit cards and with the debt outstanding. I reviewed the figures today before I came to the meeting. So pre-January, at the moment, the outstanding figure for unapproved credit card spend is £615.17, down from in the thousands when we began the report and when we started. Of that significant amount, I think it's £587, are outstanding from 2 members of staff who are on long-term sick. And we have got a process in place where we're looking at an alternative way to get them approved and authorised. Currently, in terms of this month, our spend, and this seems to be around about our average figure, is around about 3,700. That seems to be our repeat spend. The issue that I've had and the issue that Joe and I have discussed is around the monitoring and the security of the process. And it's taken me a little while to be able to get the people that I need to speak to in a room and agree to a degree the way we're going to go forward. I was able today to pick up one of Joe's recommendations, which was to have a list of restricted spend, which I'd circulated on the back of the last meeting with Joe and was trying to push through, and that should be agreed. And I should be able to demonstrate that by the time we come to our next meeting. The other, I think, main area of concern, Joe, was around the use of credit card spends to secure accommodation and the amount of time that we use that. There is now a process in place with our management accountants, and it's fairly recent, whereby we will be able to pay our hoteliers and our suppliers of accommodation through the invoicing and PO process. That is in place, but I'm unable to prove that just now because it's a very recent development. The only areas where we should be seeing purchases in temporary accommodation is where an event occurs out of hours. And so we should be moving a substantial amount of the credit card spend away and into PO and invoicing. So we are making improvements. Those improvements have just not come as quickly as I would have liked, Chair, and they're causing the slight extension and the delays. But the actual spend, we have a robust process in place now, and the spend is coming down exponentially each month.
Nigel.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I suppose just an overall comment and also some of the specifics referring to the overdue recommendations. I mean, it is something that well, myself and the auditors track, and we bring the most up-to-date position basically to this committee. You can see from what Phil's saying basically that he's given some assurances that a lot of the areas here basically have been completed. But obviously, in the context of producing this report, basically, that hasn't been evidence to the auditor's satisfaction at the time of producing report. I've got every confidence in Phil, basically, that when the committee sits next time, of which clearly I won't be here, but Phil will give me every confidence, basically, that these will be resolved, basically, and will no longer appear as extensions of these outstanding recommendations. Just in terms of some of the others, I mean, the first one on income generation is reference to the asset management system. And this was a high level recommendation at the time, and to do with how we ensure that all income is accounted for. The current system basically does not interface. This is where they raise the commercial rent, basically does not interface automatically with the financial management system, Aggresso. The proposal here was that implementation of a new system basically would improve on some of the issues that were found to be arising at the time. If you cast your mind back, albeit 3 years ago, you may well recall a report which was saying there were missing sort of rent reviews basically being implemented by the team. And that's because the manual paperwork wasn't getting through to the incomes team. I think it's fair to say, and again, this is partly in my area and Phil's, but I think it's fair to say we've sort of tightened up on that. Certainly in property services, they poached one of my income staff actually to focus on this very issue, and we do regular reconciliations of the rent that should be charged basically versus the rent that we are charging. So I can give you some assurance around that. In terms of the actual procurement of the system itself, that has been plagued by some procurement issues. We had a false start basically in that we didn't quite get the procurement right at the first attempt. We had to restart the process. Subsequently, they've looked to go down a framework route, but the framework was limited in terms of the amount of time basically you can have the system for and length of the contract. So my understanding now is that they are going back out to retender. I'm not convinced basically this one will not be removed from the report next time you meet. I mean, last famous words, but I suspect this one will be still on here. And it might well be at that stage you get potentially Emma or Jane Winfield, head of property, to come and talk about that. The other ones in terms of recruitment and retention, unfortunately, Gail Malkin, head of people, was not available basically for this particular committee or anybody else apparently in HR. I think given the position here, although once again I'm verbally assured that this is being resolved, but I think it may well be that next time you invite quarterly invite the head of people to come to committee and pick up some of the issues that Ros was referring to, perhaps on the risk stuff, which clearly Roger couldn't answer, and also potentially that one as well. You know, just to go through that. It may well be it will be taken off next time, but I would suggest that the head of people is invited to this meeting to answer some of these and pick up some of these issues that's clearly coming up.
Selective license.
Yeah, my screen's gone blank, Chair, unfortunately. I haven't actually picked up the selective licensing, but Joe's got his hand up. So Joe may have an update on that one, actually. If he hasn't, apologies, I haven't picked that one up. I think the other ones are covered by Phil. And lastly, basically, if I recall, I think there are some around data protection, which hopefully Emma's on the line, basically. Emma Jackman, and possibly she may be able to update the latest position on those outstanding recommendations.
Yep. So
Sorry, let me just take Joe's had his hand up a little while, so I'll take him first.
Thank you, Chair. So the first recommendation related to recruitment and retention, I got an email from Gail and Natasha regarding that one to say it has been completed and they're able to provide the evidence. They just hadn't responded despite multiple chases ahead of this committee. So that one should be cleared off. And then I've subsequently heard from Courtney regarding the selective licensing one as well. Again, after paper deadlines for the committee, again, providing a response and evidence as well. So although at time of papers being submitted, we hadn't heard back from them, hopefully those two should be covered off ahead of the next committee.
Thank you. Well, thanks. So that's very gratifying to hear. But let's make a note, as you suggest, that we should invite Gail to come to our next meeting. Thank you. I know Grace is on as well as Emma. I don't know between you how you want to handle these various overdue action on recommendations on GDPR. How will you
do a really quick summary? Grace is probably the one to give any more detail if there are any questions, but I'll just sort of give a very quick update against each of them. The retention schedule is done. That was signed off by directors last week. That is due to be published on the internet, so we will be signing that one off imminently, as is the ROPA. So that's the recorded processing activity. The data sharing list is complete. So there's no work for my team to do, but we do need some input from ICT and Front Door of Change prior to us publishing it. So that's a little bit behind the other two, but is substantially complete, just subject to a little bit more tinkering to get it in a position to be able to publish it on the web. And then with the corporate system that's being procured in relation to training, that should be going live in March, and there is a data protection module within there, and we are having a FOI module built, which should also meet the March target. So by March, all should have been completed.
Thank you. Grace has been very patient. Does Grace want to add something now? Your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the data sharing list will be published internally, not externally, as will the ROPA. So those obviously have a lot more detail in them. But the data sharing list is complete, as Emma said, from our perspective. It's just that other teams thought it would be a useful place to compile their lists of things like project initiation documents or things that have any AI input but aren't necessarily data protection related as well, just so it's all in one place. So that's why there's a delay, but we could publish it as internally as is, and then add to it later if need be.
Thank you very much. Just for completeness, the last item is data analytics, which is the easement of related aged debts. And that is, oh, it's Emma again.
Sorry, just one final point, and Grace might need to assist me on this, but in the audit report, it did suggest that the ROPA and retention schedule, or the data sharing list and the retention schedule, should be combined. We have looked at that, and it'd be too unwieldy a document for the organisation, just due to sometimes the mismatch in terms of the way information is captured. So that was something that came out in the audit, which they are there. They are just in two separate documents. What will become too unwieldy for people to use and recognise as if we combine them. Grace, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, just to corroborate that, to be honest, it's about nearly 700 lines in the ROPA and retention document separately. They do match, so they're the same document. It's just the ROPA has more detail because it's internal, so it's for our use as opposed to for the public to view. But they have the retention dates on the ROPA, so they do match. But yeah, having the data sharing list attached to that would become unwieldy. But it's much more usable to have the two separate lists that people can just search to see if a project that they're working on has any of those documents already in existence.
Thank you. Emma, your hand is it a legacy or a new hand? No, it's legacy. I mean, Phil, you were going, I think, on the data analytics, you were, I think, going to explain where we stand on that, because that has been delayed.
Yeah, that's correct. So we have been working our way through the process to try and resolve this, and Neil and I have been working on it constantly for quite some time. We're just not being able to get it over the line, councillor, and it's not from the lack of effort that we've put into it. It's just that the results are just not what we expect at the moment. So I'm hoping to be in a position to update you next time that we meet.
Is the 1st March deadline realistic? Sorry, 31st March deadline realistic?
I look at this constantly and look at getting the outcome to where we need to be. So I remain hopeful that it is, and I'm also aware of the constant delay. And as Nigel says, I am working hard really to get my name off the list of things that continue to be extended. So yes, I will endeavour to have an answer, and a more complete answer for you by the next hearing.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Simon.
But I think last time Nigel recommended that we get these people in who massively overdue, and we haven't done so. Are we actually in control of our own agenda? Can we actually do that? Because there's something at the full council about who set the agendas for different committees. Are we able to insist that people come?
Nigel.
I stand by my comment that I think, anybody who has outstanding recommendations for, I would suggest on two occasions and pushed backwards, that they are cordially invited to this meeting, actually. I did try and do that for this time, basically. It didn't altogether, not without success, basically, but I would strongly suggest, basically, my outgoing comment as your CFO currently, that anybody that appears on this list that has been pushed back more than 2 times, that they come and they meet you either hybrid or in person to explain. I think Phil, has been here, to explain his position. And as I say, I'd like to think that all these would be taken off in respect of his area. I can't guarantee that for anybody else's area, actually, but I would suggest that a committee, you might want to just set a sort of informal rule, basically, that anybody pushed back twice, then they attend this committee and answer to yourselves, actually.
Well, Chairman, sorry, it might be also prudent to invite the cabinet member responsible for that area as well, too, as happens at county.
Yes, I mean, that would be. They'll be delighted to be called. They will have a strong interest not to be called, yes. Any other questions, comments? If not, I think what we're meant to do now is, well, we will thank both Joe, but also Gurpreet, who's lurking in the background. Thank you very much. We're waiting to get some of your further reports for the next meeting of this committee without Nigel present, but we look forward to that. But thank you very much. I think we merely at this point note those two reports. So thanks again. As I suggested, I'm going to propose that we jump now to agenda item 12 so that we can finish by focusing on the accounts and the external audit. So I'm going to invite Emma to introduce the annual governance statement. And just by way of introduction, I always feel it's worth people taking the trouble to read it because it often gives a better explanation of how the council operates than any other single document. So thank you. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. So this is building on the work that we undertook last year in relation to the annual governance statement. So I don't know if committee will recall, but we refreshed the annual governance statement and we also redrafted the code of corporate governance. So this is the second year using that, and I hope to see further improvements year on year. But I'm very pleased with where we've got to this far. The annual governance statement is always a little bit of a tricky one. It looks back to the financial year that the closure of accounts is for, which therefore means that you're looking at a point in time which is significantly after the events have happened. And that's certainly rung true in terms of what's in the annual governance statement this year. So what you'll see when you're looking at it is that there is a mix of things that are reflective of the past, but there are also a mix of things which have happened in this year. Part of the reason that we have decided to include those, though they strictly don't relate to the year that the annual governance statement relates to, is because what we didn't want to do was produce an annual governance statement that was silent on significant events that have happened, such as the cyber incident that happened this year. We didn't want to be making a statement that everything was fine when subsequently some things happened. So if for that reason it sort of comes across as a little bit sort of spanning a wider period, that's why. And I hope that makes sense to members in terms of the sort of statement itself. Turning to the statement, you'll see it's got the ordinary introduction and sort of, if you like, aim of the council in terms of producing its annual governance statement. And then what it does is it looks at and lists a key number of areas where we've picked out some things that we need to improve or build or review. So I don't intend to go through them all, but you will notice this year compared to last, for example, we have a section in there specifically on the councillor's housing landlord. Given the introduction of the regulator and the work that's taking place in that space, we have a bigger section on corporate complaints, and going forward into next year, we hope to be able to add to that statistics. Information governance and EIR is quite a detailed section this year, particularly in light of the cyber incident that took place. We've got something on homelessness and TA in there in terms of that is an increasing risk to the council. And then there is a rather lengthy section providing an update in relation to the companies where actually a lot of work has been undertaken in terms of governance. There are statements from the head of paid service, myself, and the section 151 with regards to the contents of it. Overall, there are no significant concerns raised by any of us, though you'll note mine is there are a number of things that are raised. As members will know from council and scrutiny, also it does touch upon the increase in urgent key decisions that were taken during that period. And as members will know, there has been a significant improvement in terms of use of those, i.e. we are using them less and in more justified circumstances. Moving to the back of the agenda, there is an assessment, sorry, not the agenda, the report. There is assessment of the council's standing in terms of RAG rating on the different values that are set out in our Code of Corporate Governance and as are taken from the SIP for guidance. All of them are green and we are in fairly good shape at the moment, though there are areas of improvement. And therefore at the back, you will see that there is the action plan, which is based upon things that are covered within the report and things that we hope to achieve by the close of the next financial year in terms of the accounts coming to you. I'm happy to take any specific questions in relation to items raised.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at members if they have questions. I think Ros has a member.
Yeah, I do. Yes, it's to do with governance, actually. This committee still doesn't have any independent members as recommended by SIPFA. In fact, we recommended to have 2 independents. I just wondered, I couldn't really see it in the action plan. Perhaps I've missed it. There was an awful lot to read with this agenda this evening. So if I've missed it, I apologise. But are we actively looking for 1 or at least 2 independent members to join this committee?
We will be, and it will be something that I'll probably pick up with the new section 151 following Nigel's departure. Members may be aware we've had to do a recruitment drive for independent persons in relation to the standards regime, so that took place. And once we finished that, we're having to do a current recruitment drive in terms of our independent remuneration panel. So it's trying not to do them all at once because we only have quite a narrow pool, and it's making sure we get the right people onto the right ones and sort of being focused on it. But yeah, absolutely, it's something I'll pick up with the new section 151 once we finish the IRP work.
They have been absent for all the years that I've been on this committee, so I felt it should have perhaps gone a bit higher up the agenda.
Are you asking a question? I had one question, if I may. You refer to the corporate peer challenge, the LGA peer review. In this, I know it's going back a little bit, the council's action plan update following the 9th of April, I think 24 progress update. Could you just briefly describe what that update of the peer review has done in terms of our governance?
So in terms of the governance, the peer review didn't focus on governance. When a local authority has a peer review, they can set the parameters of it, and governance can or cannot be included. It wasn't something that was particularly a focus of the peer review, therefore there weren't really many recommendations that were governance related that came out of it. However, the follow-up that took place did sort of track the actions against the recommendations of the peer review in terms of their implementation, confirm that they were either implemented or in the process of being implemented. And I understand, though it's not an area of work that I was responsible for at the time, that they are now completed and sort of embedded. So in essence, you know, if it wasn't for LGR, we'd be waiting for the next peer review to take place in terms of revisiting that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I don't see any. If not, then we have first to agree the recommendations, and we're asked first to indicate that we approve the annual governance statement for 24-25. All those in favour, please indicate. I see we. Sorry? Oh, second. I always forget about the seconder. Who's going to second it? Simon. Oh no, it's Tiago's going to second it this time. He's been forced to second it. Then we note the action plan. I hope that's agreed. And we're going to delegate authority to you, Emma, to make any typographical changes to the statement that may be required before it's put on the website. So thank you very much. I assume you are happy to be delegated that responsibility. So thank you very much. So let's go now, after a bit of a delay, but thank you for that, to the statement of accounts to be introduced by Bill. You ready?
I am, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present the latest draft accounts for 2024-25, which is still subject to further changes because of the audit being ongoing, and also to obtain delegated authority for the signature of those, and also to sign a letter of representations, which the auditors will require in order to sign off the accounts. Within the report, I'd just like to draw your attention to a few things. So the introduction actually just outlines the changes that there have been in general audit requirements that has actually meant that there's increased capacity needs both at the external auditor's end and also the council's end. And then paragraphs 3 to 7 outlines the kind of overall position regarding kind of the position regarding disclaimer and future audits, and kind of moving the process to kind of getting out of the disclaimer position. Paragraphs 8 and 9 actually talks about fixed assets. Now, fixed assets was suspended due to what I've just mentioned on the capacity issues, partially caused by delays in production of the accounts due to the cyber attack, but also due to staffing being understaffed in the finance team. And specific actions will be needed on fixed assets to deal with it in the long term. There are kind of some issues around getting out of the disclaimed position in that you need to make sure that all of the brought forward balances are all completely audited, and because the fixed assets are done on a 5-year rolling programme, in order to get out of that position you've got to really value all of the assets. So what we will be looking at is whether we can actually do a full valuation for 26-27 to deal with that position. But that's something that's got to be discussed both internally and also with the external auditors, because obviously there's no point in doing a full valuation if we're still not going to move that area forward. And then there's paragraphs 10 to 12, which just identifies the number of areas which have changed, and there aren't that many, as you can see, a lot of it being typographical. However, there are still potential for further changes because of the ongoing audit. So I think probably at that point I'll pass over to the committee for various grillings.
Are there any questions? I'm going to start just with one right near the beginning, which comes up again later, which is about the fixed assets. Did we actually, I'm just interested, make a loss of 4.5 million on the disposal of fixed assets? Is that a correct description? I know it's been indicated in the wrong place, but what did we lose that much money on? Paragraph 11.
I think I'd have to come back to the committee on what that actually is. But I mean, the actual loss will be to do with
maybe
the
Andrew on the call may be able to explain that.
He might be able
Over to you,
but loss is based on valuations that are in the accounts at times, so it's not necessarily that we have made a major loss, and sometimes
Andrew.
it could well be to do with leases as well.
I think, Bill, it's a reclass, so it's not. I mean, the loss is the loss, right? And I don't have the specifics in terms of which assets it related to, but the correction is to put it in the right place within the P&L.
Thank you. I think that's implied
yes,
there,
that's
yes.
correct. That's what the correction is. But like, what I'm not sure of is what the actual assets are
Same.
underlying it. So what I can do is I can put that back to committee.
Ros.
Thank you. That would be good if we would have an answer to that question of where we actually made that loss. I think that would be useful to send out to all committee members. Chairman, once you've got the answer there, Phil, that would be good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Maybe mine is maybe a more general question. When it comes to the narrative report and the general fund outturn, I mean, one thing in particular, which I know is not relevant to this period, but it's subsequent, it refers to the one-off favourable variance for the concluded Fusion Leisure contract. Is it possible to get an update about the state of affairs now?
Yes, Chair. It's fair to say we are still in discussion with Fusion. Up until a few months ago, actually, they were repaying the outstanding debt, basically, that they owe the City Council as at the date of cessation of their contract. They then asked for a holiday, basically, which was granted for a period of 3 months. They are now into that third month. They are looking to have negotiations with an undisclosed third party who will acquire them, basically. So there are ongoing negotiations, basically, with Fusion as to how that will affect the outstanding debt and how eventually that will be repaid to the council. But it's very much still alive, basically.
Thank you. Please, go on, Bill.
Sorry. Yeah, my colleague here has managed to find what the 4.5 million is. It's actually a surplus if you exclude the IFRS 16 leases. So what's had to happen for 24/5 accounts is the council's had to recognise a number of lease agreements which it previously held as operational leases, and it had to recognise them as finance leases, which means you create an asset, then you dispose of it, but then create it as a liability within the accounts. So it's 5.5 million of that loss is actually to do with leases, and then there's actually a number of other assets that actually are a slight surplus that nets down to the 4.7, 4.5.
The wonders of accounting. Thank you. Maybe one last, I know what the answer will be, but we were discussing at length with Laura about registered providers and the adverse variance of nearly 1.5 million on the housing benefit payments. It just says at the end, the council will monitor the position closely and implying its lobbying. Do you have any news at all of any kind of favourable reception? I'm going to ask Nigel.
Not favourable, Chair. I mean, there was a consultation basically recently which we responded to. We haven't heard back from that consultation from the government basically as to whether any changes. So this is, just to remind you, this is where registered provider, a non-registered provider providing supported housing accommodation, we pay the benefit in respect of that, and the benefit subsidy is reduced because they are not a registered provider. You might recall in the 24/25 report, loss was stated at about 2.5 million. In the current budget proposals, we've raised that to a loss of over 3 million, basically. There is ongoing work being undertaken by the housing team to try and convert one of these non-registered providers, some of the properties they hold, to another housing association to mitigate that loss. But it is still a big concern on the budget going forward. Some of that loss is actually offset by the recovery of overpaid housing benefit. But since a lot of our working age claimants have now been transferred or migrated to universal credit, there aren't those, there isn't that amount of debt to offset. So it is a big concern for the budget going forward, actually.
Thank you. I mean, not encouraging, but thank you for the dose of reality. Yes, yes, I can see. Judith, you want to say something?
Sorry, yes, can you hear me all right? I'm a bit croaky at the moment.
We can hear you fine.
It's to do with paragraph 7 on page 177, where it says the process of rebuilding assurance will stretch over multiple years, with assurance being built over different areas on a gradual basis. Is this multiple years in the past or multiple years in the future? And how does the reorganisation of the local government affect the multiple year aspect?
The multiple years actually refers to 23-24, councillor, but also going forwards. As for how the local government reorganisation will affect it, I think that question is something which is yet to be answered. Certainly, there will have to be something done with number of councils potentially joining into one in various places across the country, some of which will be disclaimed, some of which will not. So somehow there will have to be something done at a national level to decide on how to deal with that sort of process, and how the auditors are going to deal with the discrepancies between different figures that are coming in to be combined into a set of accounts. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know.
Thank you. I mean, we're going to come on to the progress report, so maybe I'll ask, let us first just deal with the current statement of accounts, and then I'll let Andrew make his comments about the council's response to questions from the external auditor in the context of the progress report. So I'm going to propose, and I'm looking for a seconder, that we approve the latest statement of accounts. So do I have a seconder? I've got Ros as a seconder. Do we agree? And do we likewise agree that a letter of representations for 24-25 incorporating any statements required by the external auditor, arising from the ongoing audit, be signed and issued by the Group Finance Director and the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee to enable, at long last, the external auditor's opinion to be issued? Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you.
Just look, can I just question something?
Please,
Question
okay.
something, Chair. So that's an unqualified opinion, is it?
No, Chair, it'll be a disclaimed opinion still.
Disclaimer, yeah. It's another year of disclaimer because of the carryover from valuations and so on from previous years. Yeah. It'll get sorted out one day. But with that proviso.
Sorry, just to note as well, I mean, local government reorganisation, the bear that we didn't want to have, will have an effect on that as well, on all councils, as you said, because, where's the reassurance actually for us as councils and in future councils, really, financially? I think, Nigel, you're retiring at the right time.
I think it's a sad reality of where we are right now, the legacy of COVID in part. But with that, after that discussion, may we agree the letter of representations I propose? Will you second? And we agree? Thank you very much. So let's now go on to the external audit progress report and ask Andrew to present and express some of his frustration at the delays. Okay, go on, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So I will take the report as read, but do want to walk the committee through a few key points from our progress report, which starts on page 472 of your packs.
Please introduce it. It's not a long report. Please introduce.
So it's a progress report. As stated, the audit is ongoing, and we are sharing clearly a status at a point in time with the outstanding outlined in Appendix A, which I'll update members on. Points to note on page 472, we are compared to the plan that we presented to you in July, we've updated our assessment of materiality, and that has increased because it reflects the higher gross expenditure, which is what we base our materiality on, of the 24-25 draft accounts. In terms of other updates since the writing of the report, so on page 473, we reference the testing of pensions that has progressed. We have identified a difference, and to the earlier comments about technical accounting adjustments in relation to leases, this is another one where the pensions number on the balance sheet was showing as an asset of 24 million. The application of IFRIC 14 constrains the amount of, or is referred to as an asset ceiling, constrains the amount of asset that you can show or recognise rather, and it should therefore be a liability of 12 million. So that will clearly also be an update to the audit differences that we will show in this report on page 474, but we would include in our final results report. Additionally, we've also completed, subject to final review, or substantially completed other areas listed in Appendix A, including cash, debtors, investments, rental income, collection fund, and REFCUS. So progress continues to be made. However, for some context as to what I wanted to move on to, just to remind the committee, we've touched on it, and Bill obviously covered it also in his cover paper, the discussions about MHCLG's measures to clear the audit backlog and how assurance from previously disclaimed audit reports would be built back. So this reset and recovery process, as it's referred to, puts in place a series of backstop dates for audits to be completed by. So as mentioned, this year it's the 27th of February for the 24-25 audit, but for 25-26 it moves to the end of January, and for 26-27 will be the end of November. So with that in mind, we've been discussing with officers concerns we have for the council as a whole to support efficient and effective external audit process, to provide that timely assurance to you as those charged with governance, and of course to the wider stakeholders of the council. As a result, and in line with my responsibilities as your auditor, we've highlighted in our progress report on page 477 of the pack a number of recommendations and implications that we believe it's necessary to bring to your attention. Based on our experience to date, the history of which is reflected in both page 477 and also in Bill's cover paper, our view is that there's a lack of capacity in the core team within the council responsible for financial reporting to support the external audit process, and this is exacerbated by two main facts. As Bill has referenced, audit regulations have heightened in recent years, and this has placed a higher bar on what we as auditors require as evidence to support the assertions in a set of financial statements. And secondly, we note that with regards to the council, particularly in the wider organisation, there is a lack of understanding as to what's required in order to provide sufficient evidence to respond to those audit inquiries. So an inability to improve that process potentially impacts the ability to meet those requirements I've spoken about in terms of backstop dates and listed within the regulations, with obviously the overall objective of timely financial reporting, as members have already noted. We've also outlined on page 477 three actions that we think the council needs to take. Whilst these are currently not formal statutory recommendations, we're bringing them to the attention of you as those charged with governance, and will be requesting a formal response from the council with a view to collaboratively building a more efficient process for the 25-26 audit. On page 478, we share with you a RAG rated assessment of the areas to focus the improvement on. in light of the government's proposed programme of reset and recovery, as previously mentioned, at EY, we've taken the decision to share this with all audited bodies where we're responsible for the audit and where each of those are in relation to being able to meet that objective of an efficient and effective external audit across a range of relevant measures, which you can see listed on that particular slide. So hopefully that gives some further context to what I've described on the previous page. Hopefully, Chair, that's a useful whistle-stop tour through the paper. Happy to pause there and take any questions at that point.
Well, thank you very much. That was very useful and again, nice and succinct. And pages 477, 478 are quite daunting. I'm going to ask Nigel to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for a very sort of thorough update as to where we are actually. I think there are a number of issues to address, and we will formally address those and write back to you into how we are responding. I think just by way of sort of a verbal response, just an immediate one, resources are referred to here. I think it's fair to say that over this period, the finance team have been depleted of resources for various reasons, sickness, ill health, and also other absentee as well, actually, and also people leaving the team. At one stage, out of a team of 16, basically, we were at least 4 staff down, basically, both within the financial accounting team and the management accounting team. I'm not trying to make excuses, basically. I'm just saying that is a matter of fact, actually. And clearly, that is going to impact on any work, let alone the closure of accounts, actually. In terms of the working papers, I think we have to put our hands up there. Clearly, again, it's a matter of fact that the working papers weren't as good as they should have been. I think I'll put my hand up to that one. I did review some of them and review the accounts basically before they were audited, and so that falls on myself to make sure that my team, especially, are coming up to scratch in terms of the production of those working papers. It does sound like we don't do anything in terms of trying to encourage this, because obviously the statement of accounts is a across the council wide work of art in some respect, actually. So many cost centre managers and directors are involved in that. We do hold finance training sessions, and I've already spoken to the Bill and the strategic finance manager that we will hold those again for the 25-26 audit, with all members of the across the council that are involved in this, and they are multiple numbers. If you think all the cost centres we have, they have to be involved in creditors and debtors and so on and so forth. Because in terms of the timeliness, whilst again I can put my hand up in terms of perhaps some of my team not being timely, that is the same across the council. And I know Bill and Ryan, basically in particular, have problems in trying to get that information, and indeed are just receiving information now, basically, which is far too late, basically, for the accounts. I think picking up Andrew's comments actually around the standards, I think it is fair to say, as Andrew referenced, that the standards have increased quite considerably. What EY are required to do in order to sign off the accounts, and also to do the reset and recovery around the disclaimed opinion, actually, and the backstop date. So the standards have increased quite considerably. In fact, there are 200 plus samples, basically, that were given to my team, basically, to turn around in quite a relatively short space of time, actually. And it just shows the magnitude of what we are dealing with. I think in addition to that, actually, there's a lot more emphasis on third-party evidence. And how do we know, basically, that that's been received, or whatever? Where is the third-party evidence that that's been done? And again, that's part of the increased standards. I think whilst there's a lot of areas here that we can improve on, and we will absolutely take that on board. Some of the things that we talk to the auditors about, which I'm sure we'll have conversations with Andrew about, are about working paper requirements, being upfront. So we can have those well in advance of the audit starting and have a head start in trying to understand what the auditor is looking for. In terms of the samples, the same goes for the samples, that we can again have them as soon as possible, so we can plan our resources basically to get the samples back in a timely manner. And I think some perhaps just a bit of assistance in terms of what makes a good working paper. sometimes a working paper, somebody might think on our side, that's a good paper, goes to EY and they say, well, you haven't done X, Y, and Z. And I think, some assistance with that basically wouldn't go amiss. So I think, whilst I'm not sitting here saying, it's nothing to do with me, Gov, basically, there is a lot to fix within our own team. It wasn't helped with the reduced resources, but I think, there is discretion with EY as well in terms of what part can you play basically in assisting us to ensure that 25/6 audit goes more smoothly than this particular one. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Nigel. I suppose the obvious question that we should be asking, not just as audit committee, but thinking widely about the budget, what's the plan on establishment in your finance team, given the problems you've had of long-term absences and obviously inadequate numbers?
Well, in terms of the absences, we I don't think we're quite there actually, but we've certainly recruited to 3 of the posts actually. There is still 1 outstanding. We're actually taking on more resource, basically temporary resource, to actually assist with the audit. So that's the current trajectory basically that we're trying to put in place actually. I think in terms of whether it requires additional, Andrew referred to core resource basically, I think that's a judgment call. I'm sure Bill will be having discussions with the new coming CFO basically around that actually. But for my purposes, I say we'll recruit to as many as we can that are currently vacant, and we will bring some temporary resource in additional to that as well.
And I suppose I'm looking partly at Bill in terms of the requires improvement areas here, which are 4 on page 478. Do you feel, especially you've recruited already 3 more, and then you have 1 temporary in addition, is that correct?
When I say recruited, we filled the posts that have been vacant. So we filled 3 of the posts.
Yes.
There's still 1 on long-term illness, but we are recruiting another temporary member of staff basically.
What to fill
in
that?
the meantime, and that person being off, and obviously when they come back in, we'll still have that extra member of staff basically there. Sorry.
And sorry, I just want Bill to respond.
Yes, Chair. From my experience, I think a large amount of the problem is the information being held in various places around the council and the understanding around the council. So one of the things that we've done, I think it's beginning of March, 2nd week in March, we booked in a session with the management accountants because they tend to be the ones that go out and visit all of the service managers, so that we can go through what the requirements are, what the issues were around the current audit that we're going through. So then they can take that out to the service areas and provide training out there and really emphasise this need for a very quick turnaround and the type of evidence that is required when audit queries come in. So it's a kind of case of awareness and training at the moment, really, that I think has got to be our focus. And obviously trying not to have another cyber attack that delays the accounts, that'll help.
Ros. And then Simon.
Right. Can I say thank you to Nigel and to Bill as well, because you've been very open and transparent about the problems and why this has occurred. But I think as a committee, we need to be very clear about the conclusion that's been given by Andrew and the seriousness of it. I mean, this is really quite serious, actually. And you've mentioned capacity of training and so forth of all the sectors within the council. Given the seriousness of it, I really do think we need to, Chair, we need to highlight this to the cabinet member responsible, or cabinet members responsible. So I think it covers 2 possibly. So I would like that minuted, that the committee actually recognises the seriousness of this conclusion on the CY report. It doesn't put the council in a good light at the moment. It really doesn't, and I think that's to be regretted. Actually, it is really important, and I think the officers have seen this. It's sad that Nigel is going, but Bill and whoever else takes on the I think there's been an appointment made, hasn't there already? I believe, yeah, it was announced at council on Monday. Takes that on board, but also the cabinet member needs to be aware. So I'm sure that has been noted, but thank you.
Simon?
I was just going to say, I think actually it's probably all of the cabinet members because of the width of it across the whole organisation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear this.
I do apologise. I had not.
Sorry, thank you.
Sorry, Andrew. I do apologise. Yeah, given the seriousness of it, absolutely, I would have expected to see a cabinet member here actually to support what our officers are saying actually, and to respond to the EY conclusion. So thank you,
Simon.
Yeah, I suppose I'm saying a similar thing, that if you're saying it's across the council, different departments, do you feel like already that the managers of those departments have got a good enough understanding of the issues and are forcing it through their teams, or is it just because they just think this is another world they're not really interested in? I don't know. Have they got a grip on it themselves? Is from the management top down, is it being pushed sufficiently, or are you on your own fighting that battle?
Well, I think at the moment there isn't the awareness. We need to actually take the message out and use the kind of words that are within the external auditors report, and actually really drum it into people as to what the requirements are. So that is something that we're going to have to do going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. And I say we do training each year basically. So my team basically go out, they get the cost centre managers in, and they try and portray, what this is all about and how they should react when they get, when they're being asked for information by the accounts team for end of year debtors and creditors and the like, and evidence, and then from the samples. I suppose it's difficult from a manager point of view, and when I quote the cyber attack, and they're under the cyber attack, and they're dealing with that in ICT, and then we're asking for, can you provide the evidence on X, Y, and Z? And I suppose I can have some sympathy basically with managers in those instances, and there'll be other countless ones as well. But it doesn't help the situation basically, when they sort of, what I'm saying, that they're sort of deprioritizing the request for evidence basically, because they're trying to deal with the here and now in terms of other things in their service. So, we will, again, as Bill said, we will have that conversation with them basically to try and reinforce these issues basically. But, I have some sympathy with some of the managers basically, in terms of, what they're dealing with, against what we're asking them to do, but it doesn't make it right basically. But I see Andrew's got his hand up.
Andrew, you have your hand.
I do, yeah. So I just wanted to add a couple of things. So recognise and actually reflect the councillors' recognition of Bill and Nigel's honesty and openness in discussing this. It has been helpful to be able to have these discussions with them in advance, and then also just to commit to your point, Chair, about where we can help in terms of what does good look like, or with some of the training. As Bill knows, we've done that in the past, and happy to do that again in the future, and happy to engage with Nigel and Bill over the next couple of months to assist with that. From our perspective and from my team's perspective, Bill has quite succinctly articulated some of the frustrations in terms of getting evidence from the wider council. Clearly, for our team, my staff, that's frustrating as well. So we all have a collective interest here in making this run efficiently and effectively, and being able to come to you as those charged with governance and provide the assurance that you're looking for. So I think there is definitely a collaborative spirit to move this forward, and just say, on behalf of EY, we're happy to do what we can to support that.
Thank you very much. I mean, I feel that's a good note to end on, but there are one or two recommendations. I think one, which you've kindly offered, is to take up the offer to help where you can in terms of training, and maybe coming from outside, you can persuade the relevant officers in charge of the different teams about the importance of this for various reasons. I mean, it always helps to have an outsider to say a few home truths. But I think the other point, which I would agree with Ros here, is that we need to make sure, I don't think it's just the cabinet member, I think it's probably the chief executive who has to be aware. I mean, this page should be copied and shown to her about the requires improvement to understand the urgency of getting this sorted out, because it can't just drift. And yeah,
We do want to have a report in the public interest.
may we please note the report? Thank you, obviously, Bill, and in particular, Nigel, your last appearance before, as far as I know, before this committee. Yes, thank you for doing a wonderful job. And you admittedly just came on a temporary assignment. That's the problem. But also thank you very much, Andrew, for some home truths and harsh words, which I think are well taken, and I hope we can respond to what you say. But thank you, everybody. Let's finish. We've noted the report, and the date of the next meeting, when Nigel will not be here, is the 9th of April. So thank you all very much.